Is this Mike, you fucking arse? Piece of shit.
Hello, I'm Stu Rolls and welcome back to another excruciatingly nostalgic episode of the Back in the Band podcast. The show where we remember a simpler time in our lives when music and being in a band back in our youth meant you could actually dream one day of living the life of a rock and roll star. For today's episode, we'll be looking back on special guests at practice rooms and tour bust-ups. But before we do though, time to bring in today's co-host for the day. A man who can now only dream of having the mullet he once had back in 2010. It's Dan Short. Hello, Dan. Thanks for joining me today. And what is your very first episode as a co-host on the pod, right?
Yep.
So today's guest you actually used to be in a band with, right? So we'll hear more about that in a minute. But we did bring up some chat around practice rooms. Tell me a little bit about your favourite places to practice and why.
So as you know, we grew up in the same town. So you presumably remember Greenbanks, right?
I do. We never used to rehearse there because we luckily had other options which didn't cost money more than anything and meant that it was closer to home. But yeah.
So this was like a practice hub for musicians. Had green carpets on the walls or wood up the walls, flat drum heads, and they're just things I'll never forget. It was like a really cool place, yeah.
I tell you what, now I remember, we did once, we were like, no, we're going to be serious. We're going to stop practicing the shed at the bottom of the garden. We're going to pay for this and we're going to go. So I think, because there was two locations, right? So there was the one that had a few different rooms, which was like a converted church. And I have no idea if this place still exists.
It doesn't now, but I know which one you're on about, yeah.
Yeah, and then there was another one, which was at the bottom, it was like a bunk at the bottom of the guy who owned its garden, right?
It was called The Bunker. That's the one with the carpets on the walls, yeah.
So we turned up as 14-year-olds and had no fucking idea. We booked like a morning or something on a Saturday, got dropped off by a mum or whatever, and your parents are pissed off for the rest of the weekend because you've just ruined their plans. But we got there, and I don't know, just remembering it, but we were like, well, there's nothing here. Like, it's just literally, this is just a house. So this is before Google Maps, right? So you've checked on, like, I don't know, the Yellow Pages or something at the time. But we got there and it was just, we're just outside this person's house. What the fuck's going on? And he wasn't picking up the phone for whatever reason. So we remember just standing outside with all this drum kit, a bunch of 14, 15-year-olds in with some dodgy jeans and crap music equipment, just standing there. Then eventually realised, oh, it's actually a bunker. But yeah, it's funny how I think the rehearsal room that you use changes the way you rehearse quite dramatically sometimes as well, right?
It's never even about the sound, it's about the vibe of the place, I've found. It doesn't matter if the PA is amazing, it's like the closeness of the proximity of the instruments and stuff like that makes you play differently. But I love that place, yeah. I have a lot of fond memories of Greenbanks.
Nice. All right. So in a world where we're no longer recording demos in a fucking shed at the bottom of the garden, let's get going.
So today's guest is Ben Gerard. I first met Ben at a practice room after I was invited by a questionable guitarist on a night out. It was at that point I think I should have got sober. It took me about 6 months to realise which Gerard Ben was. So over the years, Ben came to respect me and we used to work on multiple ideas in bands and toured the UK together. So I'm really excited to catch up. One of my best memories with Ben is watching him slide over on stage at a charity gig, like cartoon style. The guy, whoop, 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 whoop. He landed on his back and laid there whilst the backing track continued. So I thought he was unconscious, as genuinely he didn't move. Once the song finished, I distinctly remember him getting up like nothing had happened, just getting behind his keyboard and carrying on. So Ben, it's a joy to have you on. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get into it, let's throw it back even further. Tell us about your first gig, if you can remember it.
I think my parents might have taken me to like covers bands or local bands, but the first gig I properly remember going to was Lincoln Park at the Birmingham NIA, National Indoor Arena. We went up there in a limousine.
No, for fun.
Oh, we're drinking.
Why?
Because I had some friends that had money to burn. And
it's a big event as well.
It's a big event. It's the first gig. And we had cognac, which we decanted into the glasses that were, like we took it out of our glasses and decanted it into the fancy looking, whatever you put cognac in.
He was only 8 when he went to see Lincoln Park as well.
Well, to be fair, I was about 14 or 15.
Jeez, I never got to see him, so I'm genuinely very jealous.
So tell us about gigs of your own then. Do you remember much of your very first gig?
Well, yeah. My first gig was a school band around the same time, really. It was a covers band. We had 3 songs. It was a school band. And that was it. We played in front of people in the school. We were the only act on. I don't know why they come to school to watch 3 songs and then went home. There must have been something else going on.
So give us those 3 songs.
So we would have started with I Believe in a Thing Called Love by The Darkness.
Steady on, mate. That's a tough song to cover. Let's be realistic.
We had 2 rhythm guitarists, me and Paul, both doubling up on the same parts. And then we had a lead guitarist who literally stood in the shadows on the side of the stage until the solos come up. And then he just, about 5 seconds before, would just step out slightly. You'd see him fiddling with the guitar a bit, and then he'd play these solos, note perfect. It was incredible. Then he'd just step backwards and skulk off back into the shadows until the next solo.
Did you know who that guy was?
I think he was a teacher there. No, it was a guy called Liam Chisman. Good bloke.
Oh, man. Love that. What was the band called?
Talisman.
Nice. Where'd that come from?
I believe Dan Robshaw was reading a fantasy novel and it come from there.
So, obviously, that sounds like a pretty big moment for Talisman. Did you do any more gigs, or how did that band develop?
We probably played the school 1 or 2 more times and played the same set list. I didn't tell you all the songs. We went from The Darkness to TNT by AC/DC, and then the grand finale was Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses.
And obviously that was met with a standing ovation.
He had the crowd swaying, like he'd pick out a lady in the audience and dedicate it to her.
Head teacher, yeah.
Head teacher, dinner lady, someone's mother. Yeah, it was good times. But from that, we didn't really go anywhere. Me and Paul did start writing songs together, which me and Paul then become members of Tonight We're Electric with Dan. And it was actually Paul who tripped me over on stage.
Yeah.
When Dan thought I was unconscious. So we developed into other bands after that point.
So you guys tell me, Ben, if there's other bands before Tonight We're Electric, was there, or?
Yes, but we didn't play any gigs. It was ridiculous. We were in bands where it was like, we would be drinking and be like, oh, we're a band now. No, we're in a pub. We had bands that would meet up. Me and Paul would play music and then the rest of the band members would be drinking beer. It was never really anything definitive. We kind of had one band just before Tonight We're Electric called Last Year's Decade. I'm just leaving it out there. Last Year's Decade.
Yeah, makes no sense at all.
James Hundy come up with that, the singer. And we went from them. So we discovered we're probably not going to make it as this band. So me, Dan and Paul carried on and developed into another band. We recruited Alex Hale on drums. And I started playing synthesizer rather than guitar. And then, we gigged a lot. We had about 5 songs that we gigged with. We played a jam night. That's the gig we did, a jam night. And this guy called Keith Kiefer come up to us after the show and said, that is the freshest thing I've heard from Bedford in a long time. And I, for one, believed him.
I've completely forgotten Keith Kiefer. Fucking hell. Is that Bedford Metal Keith?
Bedford Metal Keith, yeah.
Wow.
I remember we used to practice at a place called the Paddington, this pub on Midland Road in Bedford.
Is that the one on the corner near the yeah, I know that one.
Near the train station. So you always get foot traffic coming from the train station walking past. They used to let us practice there for free.
It's a result.
Yeah, brilliant. The proviso was you eventually do a gig, and we never did a gig. But mad little things would happen. So I remember once we were practicing and this guy walked past and it was like a cartoon. He walked past and then his head stayed in the same position, but his legs kept walking. And then he come back and he turned, he looked through the window and he just stayed there for 10 seconds, just looking kind of blankly. Then he walked off, thought nothing of it. About 5 minutes later, the door swings open and this man walks in that was looking through the window. And he's just nodding his head going, yeah, man. And we're like, you're right. He goes, this is the kind of shit I like to write, man. And we're like, all right. He looks down and we look down where he's looking and he makes eye contact with his microphone that we had plugged in. We didn't have a singer. And we're like, oh no. And he goes, do you mind if I have a sing? And we was like, go on then, mate. I need to explain this man to you. He had one of those beanie hats on without the fold, just like it looked like a condom.
Yeah,
one of those like.
I know the ones, yeah.
He had long hair poking out the bottom of that. He had a full-length leather jacket.
No.
he had that flame t-shirt your mum bought you from the market, that flame shirt. Right, he had that on. And he picks the microphone up and we're like, what's going on here? So we start playing some of this kind of poppy, dancey, with a bit of metal guitar, kind of symphony music. And he starts screaming down the microphone. Have you ever heard Korn, Freak on a Leash?
Yeah, of course.
You know when he does that, like, that, yes, the Gaelic
Scatting.
rapping or whatever he calls it. He started doing that over the top of his song for about 15 minutes. And then he said, right, lads, I'm off. Next time I'm going past, I'll pop in. And we never saw him again.
Never to be seen again, yeah. Never to be seen again, surely.
No.
That guy's gone. He's gone on to bigger things, I'll tell you that.
Another time we were in there, I knew nothing about this. So we were practicing and I just heard from outside the door, it's like, what? Is that someone playing the saxophone? The door swings open and this man walks in playing the saxophone, right? My brother just looks like, oh no. Apparently, the week before, he'd met them at the bar and he said, I play sax, I'll come down and join you. And they thought he was joking. So he turned up for a bit and played saxophone for about 20 minutes. And that's basically sums up that band, trying to do something and something else happening.
Just lost the will to live and the interest and the motivation to actually gig, because every time you play, some random off the street starts playing with you.
Yeah, that's how we got down short, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, that probably leads you to that. Because I don't think I've ever asked you guys, how did Tonight We're Electric come about?
Paul met me in a bar. I don't really remember it, to be honest. I think I was gaslit into being in the band because Paul claimed that...
I can't take any more of the scat man, Jonathan Davis, or the sax police, anything.
We met at a bar and we knew each other from before, like jam nights, and had seen each other before. And he apparently asked me if I want to come and attend a practice. And I was just like, sure, yeah, I'll do that. And then I turned up and I thought, actually, these guys are all right. This is the freshest sound I've heard in this practice room since I arrived. And then that was it.
From my perspective, so that is exactly what happened. He turned up with his mate and we had these songs, some of which were left over from the last version of that band we had, and just started playing. And all we knew was Dan Short actually singing into a microphone for the first time in our history. We had someone actually putting vocals down. It was Linkin Park.
Yeah. It all goes full circle. I'd just come from a limo ride with a glass of cognac.
But yeah, that was it. We just thought, this guy's got the confidence just to actually sing. I remember one singer we had, he played bass in the school band. He'd have the microphone really close to his mouth, but the volume was really down, so you couldn't hear him. So we'd turn it up and the microphone got further away from his mouth to the point it was basically by his feet. So that's the kind of vocalist we had. Like, they didn't want to sing, but they wanted to sing. It was a strange concept. And that was it. It just went from there. And I think, was it like a month after, less than that, we were gigging?
Yeah, honestly, the gigs just came out of nowhere. People were just like, I'll book you. And Soundark, to be fair, were good to us, weren't they?
Yeah.
They used to put us
good.
on the was it Sound? It was Arkfest and stuff like that.
Arkfest.
Hitchin.
I still got the T-shirt.
Yeah, it was
with
good.
the name spelt wrong. Tonight we're electric. Sounds like someone from the West Country saying it.
It's so negative sounding, isn't it? Intonation is just like, yeah, they were electric. They're not that interested anymore. So if you want to watch them, don't worry about it.
That's it. That's
oh
it.
Man, so good. Tell me, do you remember much of Arkfest? Any stories of gigs where you guys just complete embarrassment or ridiculous absurdities?
There's a lot, mate, isn't there?
I remember doing one gig. They were putting on gigs and they said, can you play this pub? And they wanted us to do like a 45-minute to an hour set. We had 6 songs.
Oh,
So
yeah.
do you remember, we did a cover. So we did 6 songs, we did a cover. And then he looked at us and he was like, you got another 50 minutes. So we played the songs again, but slower.
Yeah, different order.
I
remember that bar.
Playing Rumours at 60 BPM. And I think in the end he just said, go on lads, you finished.
I think it's worse where you are finished. That's it, you're done.
Yeah. Tonight you're finished. Yeah. Anything else? Come on, there must be plenty.
We have a bit, and I think it was during Rumours. Was it during Rumours? Because that big crescendo at the end of Rumours, we used to get everyone up on stage. And then Paul would get annoyed because people would be treading on his pedals. They would go from distortion to flange, suddenly gone clean. There's nothing worse than a clean sounding guitar when you're trying to rock out.
It was always me as well. I used to kick at least the lead out of his guitar every gig.
He used to pull the cables out of his guitar. He was furious.
Yeah. I still think that's why he works out to this day. He's quite a lot bigger, isn't he? Guy wants to just hang on to his cables.
So tell me some of the highs of the tours. What kind of stuff went on? Anything?
Had a fist fight in Manchester with one of my best mates. Pretty good.
The one guy that was on tour with us as a guest that he got rabbit punched twice in the face. Poor guy.
Oh, dear. And he was going to my brother, right, take me home. We're like, mate, we're in Manchester. I'm not taking you home. He's like, take me to the train station. He's like, mate, just calm down. You had a little fist fight. It's all right.
Take me home. I'm injured.
He had a fat lip, bless him. And we still had 2 dates left on the tour, Norwich and Birmingham. And he had a fat lip. And then Dan looked at him one day. I was like, what happened to your lip, mate? And I was like, he fell over.
I remember. It was all a bit hush. It was all a bit hushy, wasn't it?
So talking about those tours, I think I remember you guys having merch and stuff.
Well, it was actually the guy I rabbit punched. He used to design all our merch. So that's why he was on tour. So I feel a bit bad for that.
But we'd already had his designs at that point. The punch was secondary, wasn't it? Not unrelated.
It was payment for the brilliant designs.
How many tours? You did quite a few, or?
We did 2, and we were booked onto a 3rd, and we decided we didn't want to do it. And that was it. That's when we called it a day. But we did 2 good tours, and we enjoyed them.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's get a little bit more musical. You were keys in Tonight Electric. Tell us about that. Did you always play the keys?
Yeah, so I got keyboard, I think, very young age. Like when your parents just stick a keyboard in front of you when I was like 10, and it wasn't an advanced one. So I'd always had one in the house from that point on. But when I was 12, I got a guitar. Started playing guitar, and that's what I played in Talisman, and that's what I played in the first version of LYD, last year's decade.
It doesn't make it any cooler if you use an acronym, mate. Just
that's what we ended up doing, LYD. But yeah, so I was playing guitar in that band. Basically, it was Enter Shikari. I was at college and I heard Enter Shikari, and I was like, they've got synths and guitar. This is when I first started using Logic Pro, and I started programming synthesizers and stuff, and got really into Enter Shikari. And I remember going to the Birmingham NEC for like Tech Fest or whatever it was, and they had a Roland SH201 synthesizer. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
I used it for every single gig that we ever played as Tonight Electric. So I went and got this synthesizer after that, and that was it. I was just on keyboards from that point.
Funny how like one piece of equipment can really just change the way you approach it as well. And you're like, have you still got it?
I've still got it. Yeah, I've still got it.
So what was your favourite thing of being in a band over the time?
I think the early stages when it is just organic and there's no expectation, you're literally just exploring what sound you're going to do. That is the best time. And you're just playing with your mates. You know what I mean? That's my favourite time.
Yeah, the camaraderie. Do you remember when we got rejected from some song competition in Bedford? I can't remember what it was for, but we were so upset that we just went home and made a complete new song. And that was, I think, the origins of Get Up, Get Out, wasn't it?
Exactly. We went home and wrote Get Up, Get Out.
It was like a big moment for us. We stood outside and we were like, well, we didn't win. What can we do? I don't know, let's channel it. Let's go make a new song, and just walked home. That was it. Like
we're furious.
Yeah.
Just channeled that angst.
I think they even, it was like Simon Cowell. They even stopped us mid-song. Okay, thank you.
Harsh,
really?
man.
Okay.
Wow.
It was like, do you want us to perform it again? It's like, no, you're fine. Okay. We went home and wrote Get Up, Get Out.
When you were younger, do you think being in a band was a bit of a, right, this isn't up yours, and your mum and dad didn't want you to be in a band, or it was like, yeah, I'm angry, I'm not listening to fucking Britney Spears anymore, I'm like, you wouldn't have said that because you continue to listen to Britney Spears.
Yeah, I still do to this day. And my parents, they were always like, my dad used to drive us to gigs, and he used to drive, in the early days, he had this big Iveco, what you'd call like a transit van, and used to drive us all to gigs and drive equipment to practice and stuff. So they always encouraged us.
So important as well, though, isn't it? Without that, it makes it so much harder without that support.
Oh, definitely.
Someone around you that even just lifts, man, taking gear, especially at that age, or even that time where you just don't have money at that age, do you really? I mean, don't even now. The kids have stolen it all, but...
That's it. I started the cycle again. Now I'm paying for them.
It's just forever broken.
You're saving up for a transit van. Support the kids. Yep.
Oh dear. We just had laughs. We all knew each other's humour, and if you didn't know our humour, then it was like you weren't part of the crew.
common ground, isn't it, as well? Like, usually there's obviously, a wide range of people that are in bands, but the majority of people have the same thing in common. You're all there for a good time. And like you say, 99.9% of people aren't making any money out of it. So they have to be there for that reason. Otherwise, what is the fucking point? Like,
That's it.
Literally
Agreed.
no point at all.
I was going to say, we did one gig, right? And we'd played a gig at the Paddington. So we eventually did pay him back, actually, because we played a bit gig as Tonight We're Electric at the Paddington. And Dan Short got a phone call from the sound man at the Luton SU. I said, Dan, I need a favour. I've got a guy coming down here tonight who, it's his birthday party and the band's pulled out and he needs a band. Can you come down and do it for free? And I was a bit reluctant at first, but then the guys convinced me. So we went down to Luton SU about 8 o'clock. I had a night planned out with my mate Miroslav. We were going into town. No, 8 o'clock, we're zipping it down to Luton. We get in there and we go to play this venue and the bouncer goes, yes, £5 each.
No.
And I don't think it was even a bouncer, actually. It was the guy whose birthday it was who wanted us to play.
I started slagging him off to his face, and he was like, "Well, it's actually my birthday." I said, "I'm here to play this guy's birthday, and I don't even want to be here."
He goes, "I don't even know who this prick is."
Yeah.
And the guy goes, "I'm the prick." I remember we played the gig. We eventually negotiated us coming in for free and the people we were with, but then we ended up paying for one person to come in, which was ridiculous. But Dan Short, there was no one in the venue. There was no one in the venue apart from the people we come with, the guy whose birthday it was, and the barman. So Dan Short's just started picking up like these little chairs and throwing them around the room during the set. That was it. We played. There were no other bands there, and then we just went home.
Wow.
That was another situation where it was like, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And we're going to take the piss. We're going to have a laugh because this is a washout, but who cares?
As soon as I met him for that couple of minutes, I thought, I can see why a lot of people didn't want to come down for you, mate.
Yeah.
You guys played at the SU when it was actually pretty jumping, right?
I loved the SU. Had the best sound, in my opinion. The sound, I don't know what it was, it just popped. Everything that of our sound that you could hear coming back, it just sounded incredible.
Yeah, Andy was very good as well. His rig was decent and he knew what he's doing. That's half of it. I think the only thing that let that down was because you had that upstairs bit. So it was a bit like if there was people there who were just there to fuck around rather than actually see bands, it became we'll go upstairs and then suddenly be empty downstairs.
To put into perspective how long I'd been going to the SU for, when I first walked into the SU, everyone was still smoking. As you walked into the basement, it was just filled with smoke.
Wow.
And that's how I remembered it. I couldn't work out if it was cigarette smoke or smoke machine, but it was glorious.
You never knew, did you, back in the day? Do you remember being at gigs and the walls were literally dripping?
Yeah.
Like when they say the walls are dripping, I remember watching Enter Shikari at Bedford Esquires. There was about 700 people in there and the limit was like 200. They were letting people in the back door. It was crazy. And the walls, you'd run your finger on the wall and it was dripping wet. That was a gig. That was a brilliant gig.
It's time once again for our My Napster section of the pod, where we ask our guests to provide a song for this season's Spotify playlist. Ben, tell us which song throws you right back to the days of being in a band. The song that probably reminds you of drinking a whiskey drink, drinking a vodka drink, drinking a lager drink, drinking a cider drink, a song that reminds you of the good times, and a song that reminds you of the better times.
So this isn't a song that when I was actually in a band, it throws you back to, but this band are the reason, which you've already heard in this podcast, one of the reasons I started getting into playing music. So this is Linkin Park, Numb.
Yes.
Banger, banger, banger.
Unbelievable.
20 years ago, that was?
20 years ago, I was going to school and one of my best mates, the guy I rabbit punched, Luke, said, Ben, the new album's out. And I said, okay. He goes, we're going into town to get it. I said, Luke, it's a school day. I can't go into town. He goes, we're going into town to get it. We hop on the bus. We don't go to school. And we buy this album from MVC. We love the album. We go and watch him on the tour when it comes. And I've still got this copy of the album here. So all the songs on this album remind me of that. They're one of the bands that we based our original sound on because they were just very straightforward. Melody line, repeat the melody line for 4 bars, then drop some awesome chords underneath it. And that's kind of how we structured a lot of our songs initially. And yeah, it always takes you back. Always remember that day.
Funny as well how you remember actually going to buy it, isn't it? Like now, like firstly, you probably can't remember the last time you did it. Secondly, that is so like vivid, that memory of going and buying it, spending your money that you'd worked fucking hard for as well, probably. And yeah.
No, I think Luke bought me it actually. But,
and then still fucking
I still touched him. What an ungrateful git. Yeah, no, but this is the romance of music and buying music. And I feel sad that now it is more online based and playlist and suggested. And I remember going into music shops as a kid and you didn't know the songs, but you saw this awesome album cover of like a flaming skull. And you're like, oh, The Offspring, I need to get that album because the album cover's brilliant. And you take it home and you'd be like, yeah, that is brilliant. Or actually, that was quite naff. Next time I'll pick something better. But it was fun. You had the experience.
It's such a double-edged sword. I've said it so many times. Something like Spotify, I fucking love it. It's great. It's really easy to find something you have. Everything like that, like it's amazing. And there's some really good recent features as well that they've added. But fuck me, I've listened to songs religiously that I do not know the song name, the artist, the lyrics or anything because I do not invest in it physically or time-wise or financially. So I just don't care. So you have no ownership on it. And I think it's so shit because I know, for example, my kid's going to go and have no care in the world about music. It's going to be so right. Yeah, fuck that. Yeah, I'll throw that one away. Not interested. Next.
Yeah.
And it's not great. Like, it's not good. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, really. It does disturb me because I've got so many stories with that kind of thing. I remember my dad gave me £20. He said, Ben, I was about 14. He goes, Ben, go to Milton Keynes with your brother and buy a pair of jeans. You need a new pair of jeans. Go and buy them. You pick them out. It's 20 quid. Rather than buy a pair of jeans, I went into HMV and I bought Papa Roach Infest.
Great. My first CD. Love it.
For £16. And then I went and got a value meal from McDonald's.
Yep.
How crazy is this that that's all our first CD? That was my first CD as well.
What, Infest?
Yeah.
Brilliant album.
And I bloody loved it.
I still I think of that album. I think of that time. I think of, my dad's reaction when I come back with a CD. He was not happy.
Man, that's a really good choice. Thanks for that. And thanks for joining us on the pod, man. Really enjoyed reminiscing and hearing a lot more about Tonight We Were Electric than I actually ever knew.
Cheers, Ben.
No, thank you for having me.
Hey there, rockers. This is James Hetfield from Metallica, and you've been tuning in to the Back in the Band podcast. Thanks for riding the lightning with us. Remember, this isn't a one-way conversation. Connect with us on Instagram. You can find us at Back in the Band Pod. Got something to say? Tweet us at Back in the Band. And of course, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss the riff. Until next time, keep rocking, stay tuned, and stay metal.